everyone, and welcome to today's live. Today, I will be chatting with Janice Chaka, introvert, introvert success strategist. It's an unusual role, sorry.
Might
Introvert
change that
success
one.
strategist and a TEDx speaker, and she will also be speaking at our Skillsme Leadership Summit this December. Hello, Janice.
Hi, thanks for that. Yeah, it's a mouthful. I keep switching between like coach and strategist and all the things.
I love the sound of strategist, to be honest, but I'm very curious. What is it that you do, Janice?
So I have fingers in many pies, but I mainly work as a sort of an executive presence coach, specifically for introverts, focusing on areas like energy management, public speaking, effective communication, meeting strategies, basically strategizing their career in a way that works for them. And the idea is to help introverts sort of communicate confidently and strategically and building careers that work for them. But I also create sort of courses, coaching programs, and content to help introverts, no matter where they are in their career journey, to build their presence and their brand and enhance their communication skills and thrive in team dynamics. And along with that, I work with organizations because part of it is that there is this gap between communication gap in general between extroverts and introverts, and workplaces don't really fully understand that and use the tools that they have at their disposal to make that work. So I provide workshops and talks on topics like bridging introvert extrovert dynamics, career advancement, burnout prevention, and personal growth. And so doing these things, I support both individuals and teams and organizations in understanding and appreciating sort of diverse communication styles and ensuring a more inclusive and productive workplace in general.
Sounds like you do a lot of things, Janice, there. Bridging a lot of gaps there. As an introvert, I can understand the need for that.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
but was there a moment that made you, that inspired you? Maybe a story, or maybe your journey that inspired you to start doing this? I mean, this is a very unusual field. I don't know many introvert success strategists. So, why did you decide to become one?
Um, hmm. Did I really decide to become one is the question. So my background is in human resources. So I used to see a lot of the time. I'd interview people, I'd see people get skipped over for promotion, all sorts of things. And at one point I was a recruiting manager for a large company that we cannot name. And I was traveling the world and I got invited to speak at a conference called 7 in 7, where they were doing 7 cities, 7 countries, 7 continents in 7 years. 7 in 7. And I got invited to speak about the water cooler and sort of how digital nomads were working and remote work. And so I was having this conversation and talking on stage about what remote work looks like, because I used to work remote way before it became popular in those 20 years that we don't talk about. And so I had a really big background in that and used to work remotely between Mexico and America and other countries, hiring all the time. So we're having this conversation about what tools you can use and what that would look like. And we were having this conversation about the water cooler. And the water cooler used to be a place where people would hang out and drink water and talk about various things. And someone asked a question. They were very much like, I have an introvert coworker and we've introduced the water cooler on Slack and they won't turn up. Why is this? And it was kind of like, well, the whole point of remote work isn't to replicate what you had in the office. It's a different environment. And if they didn't turn up in the in-person environment, why on earth would they turn up virtually? Like, they're there to do their work and go home. Like, what? Why is this important? Does this add to their KPIs? No. So then why do you care? And then there was follow-up questions around introversion. The assumption was that I was an introvert coach. And I was like, well, not specifically, but as an introvert who's worked in HR, as an introvert who's worked as a manager and a leader, I do have an insight into like how corporate views introverts and also how HR views introverts and all of that good stuff. And so it kind of started from there. And then I did a lot of work in Southeast Asia because their communities and their culture tends to be a little bit more introvert leaning, but they're working for big American companies that are expecting certain attributes from their members of staff. And so I did a lot of work there, looking at what that looks like. And I randomly held an event in Singapore years ago at this point, there was a little bakery that I really loved, and they wanted to hold an event. I was like, oh, let's do a networking for introverts random event. Threw it out there on Eventbrite, not really expecting anyone to really turn up. I expected a couple of people. We sold out the bakery. The bakery was very full. And that's when I realized, oh, this is actually a need. This isn't just random people asking me. This is a very important thing for a lot of people in various countries, and sort of it grew from there. That was a long-winded thing. It's been a long journey.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing this? How long have you been helping introverts?
I think over 10 years.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. That's really impressive.
Yeah, I didn't realize I was kind of going through myself. I'm like, oh, the years just kind of flow.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this topic. Let's talk about introversion and extroversion. Now, you mentioned it a bit about the cooler, but in general, I mean, I have heard a lot of people say, well, there is no point of distinguishing between introverts and extroverts. I mean, we're all people after all. No need to put labels, as they say. And why do you think it's important to understand the differences at the workplace?
That's a great question, because, and part of it, I do agree, like when the labels put people in boxes, and it's kind of annoying, but it's also how we work as humans. We love to categorize things. That's how our brains take in information. We need a little place to put stuff. And it's true, everyone is unique. And I don't want to say that all introverts do this and all extroverts do that, but understanding the general distinctions between introverts and extroverts can make a really big difference in fostering a truly inclusive and productive workplace. And a few reasons why recognizing these differences is valuable is, number one, communication styles. Introverts and extroverts often have different communication preferences. Extroverts may thrive in brainstorming sessions, while introverts might prefer time to think before they speak or come to a meeting. And so when teams understand these differences, they can create communication strategies. And that's kind of what I do with organizations and teams, is help them co-create a communication strategy that makes space for everyone. So ensuring all voices are heard and people do things intentionally, and stops a lot of extra work. The second thing is energy management. Introverts often are energized from alone time and doing other things. Extroverts feel energized by group interactions. And so having back-to-back meetings or large group settings are great, but they shouldn't be the only way that teams communicate or workplaces communicate. So acknowledging this difference helps teams structure work environments that allow people to recharge when needed and they respect boundaries. And so with that, partly what I'm talking about here is team dynamics and productivity. And so when leaders understand these differences and they understand these dynamics, they can then balance sort of team contributions. They might invite people to share their insights in a way that feels comfortable for them, giving them time to prepare, encouraging written feedback. In general, it leads to richer collaboration and brings out the strengths of every team member. And the one thing that we don't really talk about that much is career growth and retention, because many workplaces are structured around extrovert norms, open plan offices, frequent meetings, social networking events that aren't have anything to do with your job or you getting a promotion, but if you don't attend, you don't get that promotion. And when companies only cater to these extroverted norms, they may overlook the talents of introverted employees, and so they leave and they go different places. So recognizing these different work styles and preferences and personalities helps organizations build an environment where introverts and extroverts, everyone feels valued, engaged, and therefore improving retention and career satisfaction in general. So that's kind of why it's important to categorize people in certain ways, or at least have them self-identify and categorize.
It's just like, I guess, well, I mean, maybe categorizing into introverts and extroverts is not so popular, but then everybody's familiar with DISC, which actually takes into account the introversion and extroversion, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
right? And there,
Yes.
it's the idea is to promote collaboration, to generally get better results as a team because you understand each other's differences. So I guess it's all back to that, right?
Exactly that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So for a leader, yes, so they have both introverted team members and extroverted team members. How can the leader get the best out of both?
Ooh, that was a slightly different wording than I was thinking, or you were going to say. I was already like somewhere else. So one thing that's really interesting is this is about being a good leader in general. And the first thing is recognizing that that's a thing that you need to do, because a lot of people are really good individual contributors, and then they get promoted to management and they don't get any support or training or guidance. They just sort of go along and do the job. And that's detrimental both to the member of staff, to the organization, to the people below them, their peers, everyone who works with them. And so one of the things is to reach out to your peers, have a peer network. What do other people do? How does it work for other people within your organization, other members within organizations that are similar to yours, that are disparate to yours? Having a community that you can reach out to and talk to without giving away trade secrets about your work is really important. And not enough people do that. And I'm not on about networking for your next job. I'm on about having a support group that can answer questions on the fly or on the cuff. And that support group doesn't just have to be people who work. It could be your mom, it could be your cat, it could be a coach. There's all sorts of ways that you can get support. But back to the question about sort of how to bring out the best, create a flexible environment for contribution. Good leaders know that when there are options and people have options in a way to contribute in ways that suit them, it brings out the best. So this might be someone making notes for the meeting, having an agenda in advance for the meeting, following up with the meeting. What contribution looks like doesn't have to be always speaking up in the meeting. That's not the only way someone can contribute to a meeting. And so thinking about different ways and giving options to that is really helpful. Allowing written contributions, voicemails. Slack has so many different options for sending messages, and yet everyone is all like emojis and writing down. That's not the way that everyone likes to work. And there is that common myth that, oh, all introverts like the written word over everything else. I am a voicemail person. I will very much message people on WhatsApp. That is my old Voxer. That is my go-to. I will speak something out. It might not be coherent, but I will speak something out rather than writing it. So don't take your biases and put them on other people. Ask people what they would prefer to do. Be curious. Extroverts might appreciate brainstorming sessions where they can think out loud. You can have those out loud brainstorming sessions and have a precursor questions in advance so introverts can start the ball rolling. It's just offering these varied formats to make sure that everyone feels comfortable participating. Another thing you can do is sort of encourage growth through tailored challenges. You as a leader need to see your team as an individual, but as a team as well, and help each team member grow by providing challenges based on their strengths, not just, oh, we've got to work on your weaknesses, because not as humans, we can't be good at everything. And just focusing on people's weaknesses, if it's not super important to their job, is detrimental. So it could be assigning tasks for introverts that allow them to research deeply or analyze information and share their insights in a way that fits their style. For extroverts, it might look like encouraging to lead a discussion or present ideas. I don't know, whatever it might be. Everyone is different. And so I don't want to specify you need to do this only. And the other thing that is really, really important and never gets asked at an interview or when you start a job is, how would you like your feedback to be given? Some people like it written, some people like it at the time, some people would like, send me an email and then we have a meeting afterwards. Leaders know, really good leaders know that feedback and recognition are super important, but don't always motivate people in the same way. So asking people how they want praise, how they want constructive feedback, and what that looks like to them will make them feel seen. And that's what we want at work, is to be seen and valued and recognized in a way that works for us. There's so many other things I could talk about, sort of balancing group dynamics, supporting everyone's sort of energy needs, boundaries. Boundaries are really important. Respecting boundaries, setting boundaries, making sure that you set an example. So blocking time out in your calendar, if that's so be it, that you want to do deep focus work, encourages everyone else to do that, and that it's okay as long as no one's like instant messaging or sending an email or something. Unless the building is on fire, you should be able to set aside, even if it's half an hour a day, where you get to do focused work and you don't get interrupted. But you need to set that example and set that safe space. And honestly, all this is about as a manager is psychological safety for your team members. And that takes time. Expecting you to go in and be like, hey, I'm your new manager and I can respect me. It takes time. It takes intentionality. And you have to work at being a good leader or a good manager. And a lot of workplaces don't give you the time and space to do that with all the other demands they put on you. And so you might have to do some extra work outside of the office to make that work for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Makes sense. I really liked how you mentioned, like this example you gave, a specific example of asking about what does a good feedback look to you, or like how do you want to receive it. I think this is, I personally I never asked this question, but I think after this I'll always be asking this because, well, because like when you know your team, you've been working with them for a long time, you know it already, most likely you know it, you can see it through their reactions more or less. But then if you have a new team member, I mean, your normal way of giving feedback might not be like, they might take it as criticism, like if you tell them something right away. And I actually have recently heard several stories from, other leaders where they got a new team member, they gave them feedback in their normal fashion, constructive right away after the thing, and they would take it as such criticism to the point that they eventually say that I don't want to work with you anymore. Like I literally had like 2 cases recently I heard about them, and I was just like, wow. And it's all back to, it's just a communication thing. I mean, it's just a communication thing, and they would have found that out if they just asked that question, right?
Yeah, be curious.
Be curious. Yeah, interesting. So okay, different question. So a lot of introverts feel a bit pressured into fitting into those extroverted spaces you mentioned, and
Mm-hmm.
extroverted companies, extroverted cultures, and especially on their leadership roles, because, well, I mean, shouldn't I have, be, I don't know, a charismatic, very, social leader, but, there are introvert leaders as well. So is it necessary to act more extroverted when you become a leader, or is there an alternative way to still be a good leader?
So my my first question to that, I don't know if I necessarily have an answer, is what people mean or think when they say act extroverted. And I realize what I should have started with is sort of my definition as far as I'm concerned about introversion and extroversion, because I'm making some assumptions about some humans. So imagine a solar panel and a rechargeable battery. So extroverts are more like rechargeable batteries. They gain energy from human interaction, and it sparks up their day, and they gain that energy and they love it. And if they get less social interaction, they kind of get low energy, right? But they go and recharge and talk to humans and they're all good. Introverts are more like rechargeable batteries. They have a certain amount of energy. It dissipates throughout the day, talking to humans or whatever it is that they're doing. And when the energy gets low, they need to go back and recharge. They cannot recharge and socialize at the same time. They need to be very separate, and that's where the boundaries come in and where that recharge time comes in. So when people, and I hear this a lot, it's like, I need to act extroverted to be sort of seen or be a leader. And you mentioned charismatic or loud or whatever it is. I know some very charismatic introverts. I know some very charismatic extroverts. Loud introverts, loud extroverts, shy introverts. And it's really interesting because dictionaries and society and like media have put these words, these attributes on what extroversion is. And therefore people are like, oh, you need to speak up more in meetings. I'm like, do I though? But that's seen as like an extrovert thing, is speaking up in meetings. But a lot of people or introverts might not want to speak up if they're still processing, if they feel they have nothing useful to contribute, if they just don't want to be in the meeting because does it have to be a meeting? And so these attributes that are seen as extroverted and make people feel sort of uncomfortable or that they have to be this way to get ahead kind of sucks. And part of that, like a random story, is a reporter reached out to me recently to talk about conferences and how introverts, a lot of conferences have a lot of extracurricular activities now, and how introverts must be really anxious about these extracurricular activities. And they kept on saying like, well, tell me like what an anxious introvert would do about this. And it was like, but it's not anxiousness. It's just energy management. It's not about, we can do extracurricular activities as long as there's a point to it. Like generally sort of networking things or whatever it is, great, but I need a reason. Give me a point, give me a reason to do it. It's maybe overstimulation or I've used too much energy on other things. It's not that I'm anxious about it. It's just I care about my energy and I want to use it for really useful things for me. But they have the story already set in their head that it was introverts being anxious about conferences, and so it was a whole thing. But if an introvert feels the need to act extroverted, as I've blathered that, what does that really mean? It's being visible is actually more important, and how you're being visible. And that can be very different to very different people and very different things. Find out what is important to your manager, what that looks like. So if it's they need a report every Friday of what you did because they can't keep track of everything that's going on, great. Because we as employees kind of assume that your manager knows exactly what's happening all the time, and they're not omnipotent, they can't. So sending them a report every Friday or one day or insert day of the week here that's like, this is what I did, this is the projects I worked on, blah, 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 blah. Yes, they're project management tools. Yes, managers could go and pull that themselves, but you're basically running a marketing campaign. So just like Coca-Cola or just like other organizations, you should be kind of trying to be top of mind. So what is important to your manager should be important to you, it's important to your team. Depending on what the goal of the organization is it you need X things or you need Y things, then everything you do should be towards X rather than Y. It really does depend. But you really need to be true to yourself. That's the only way that you are going to feel happy with what you're doing, because if you do go the role of acting extrovert or doing things that you think people want in a way that doesn't feel good for you, you're just going to end up burnt out and unhappy and sad and low energy and not liking your job. And your job might not be the issue. You might actually like the role that you're doing and the task that you're doing, but you're doing it in a way that isn't good for you and your personality and your body's needs and your energy needs and your mind's needs. And that will have a detrimental a detriment. There's a word I'm trying to think of that I can't think of right now, overall, and can lead to health consequences or just being bad at your job because you're not doing it in a way that works for you. So if you do feel the need to act extroverted, is that organization really a good one for you? Is there a way that you can talk it out with your support group? Is there a way that you could get a coach to help you through it? Is there a way that you could talk to your manager and see if that's really what it is? Because a lot of the time, someone will come to me and they're like, yeah, my manager says I need more executive presence. And I'm like, okay, what does that look like? And they're like, I don't know. They just said I need executive presence. That means different things to different managers, to different organizations. So go back and ask the question specifically, what does that mean? If you need me to speak up more in meetings, why? What does that look like? Do you mean I have to ask a question every time? Does it mean that I have to have an answer to a thing every time? What does that mean to my KPIs? Does it mean anything? No. Okay, so why do I need to do it? Obviously, don't say it necessarily with that attitude, but get to the root cause of what it is people are assuming and thinking, and then work through that problem. Short version. Ha.
Oh, makes a lot of sense because I mean, as you said, like there's so many things that are very vague, like executive presence, or like be more, I don't know, be more social. Again, what does that mean? Like with colleagues after work, or like or at the cooler? Like what? What? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Or just all they want is like a question in the meeting. What's that about? Oh, that's good. That's good. And can you share a story, maybe your own or from your clients, where not embracing introversion caused a major issue for a leader, and what could have prevented it?
Okay. So, all right. So there was a manager that I worked with in a consulting firm, and they initially struggled because they were trying to, what we just talked about, they tried to lead in a way that didn't align with their strengths. They believed to be an effective leader, they needed to be more extroverted, vocal in meetings, engaging in frequent networking, and they were pushing themselves really, really hard to lead this highly energy draining work style, even though it felt exhausting and unsustainable, and it led to them getting shingles. And we were having this conversation about that they used to get shingles regularly and it was a very stressful job that they were in, and they changed and now they stopped and now it started again. And so as they tried to maintain this facade, mask sort of several issues emerged. They were spending too much energy on appearances and what they thought they had to do, which meant they had little time or focus or brain space left for deep strategic thinking, which is what they were known and good for before they became a manager, right? Or one-on-one connections, which was their strong suit. So in team meetings, you found that they couldn't keep up with the constant flow of discussion because they weren't giving themselves time to prepare. They didn't have the brain space. They were foggy. Therefore, they felt less confident in their decisions. And then they started to feel imposter syndrome. And they felt that they weren't good at the job. They weren't able to give what was necessary. Maybe they shouldn't have been promoted and all of those things. And it starts this huge spiral because they start to overthink and they're spending more energy on that and less energy on like recharging. And their team began to notice the disconnect, and they were taking more days off sick and or everything else. And the team then sort of lost trust in that leader. And so collaboration felt forced and everything else sort of was starting to crumble. And started working with them. I mean, there's things I could talk about that could have prevented these things, but we're going to talk about sort of how we work together to reframe their approach to work. And the first one, and I'm going to say this all the time, and I'm going to keep banging on about it, is boundaries to help you maintain your energy. So they learned to respect their energy limits. I mean, we did a whole energy audit and figured out what times of day was good for them and what tasks were good for them and that sort of a thing. But they took a little time, but they started to learn to respect their energy limits, blocking out time for focused work, delegating some of the highly social tasks to give their team an opportunity to rise up, like networking events, and to team members who enjoyed them or tag team them up and freed them up to focus on strategic planning and decision making, which is what they were hired for in the first place and what they were good at. This also gave them time to prepare strategically for meetings, and to guide team discussions thoughtfully. They became more of a facilitator, because that's something you don't get taught, like how to facilitate meetings and be good at setting up meetings. And so that's something that we worked at really hard, and coming to meetings with a well-structured agenda, inviting team members to contribute and creating a collaborative environment without needing to like dominate the conversation because they're the leader. No, the idea is that everyone comes along for the ride. And then leveraging one-on-one conversations with team members, peers, up levels and down levels and that sort of a thing, to connect deeply with other people, understand their concerns, and then provide targeted guidance because of their strategic planning. So it was really good. It took a little time. It wasn't an overnight success sort of thing, but 6 months to a year, it made a huge difference to their team. They felt more authentic. They felt more comfortable. They had more brain space. They actually did their hobbies. It was a great thing, but it just took time and some work.
Wow. Well, that sounds fantastic, how you can just turn things around by fundamentally embracing your personality, right? And doing the right things for
Yeah,
you.
for you. Yeah.
And I guess a lot of people just don't even know how to do it because they don't. Well, I mean, if they were, well, some people are better at self awareness, I think, and like what makes them good or like feel better or worse. Others, just follow the organization or whatever is done there. I do the same. Why am I worse or something? And then you realize that actually it's not working for you.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like with this person. Well, thank you for sharing.
No, you're welcome.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us, or something I haven't asked you before we start wrapping up?
No. This has been great, though. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it was lovely to have you. And Janice, so you will be speaking at the Skillsme Leadership Summit this December.
Yeah.
What will people gain from your session?
Come watch the session. You'll find out. Should be my stock answer, but I have to do the salesy thing. So honestly, it's about, there's going to be some things that I'm going to cover, and there's three main things that are essential principles for every introvert leader to know to be a truly great leader. Energy management, which I've talked about, self-knowledge, and sort of helping build collaborative teams. So the energy management will sort of think about strategies to help you manage your energy effectively so you can stay engaged and be sustainable as a leader, even in high demand environments, with the self-knowledge and confidence that comes with that. So developing a self-awareness to tap into your strengths and overcome self-doubt or imposter syndrome, and how to lead authentically, and building collaborative teams, how to build and inspire. That's the really important thing. Inspire teams that thrive on diverse input and trust and collaboration, regardless of personality type. So the idea is to equip you as much as I can in the short time that I have, with some tools tailored for introverts to lead with your strengths. So whether you're a new manager or have been a little manager for a little while and want to rehash some things, this masterclass should empower you to lead in a way that works for you. So authentically as an introvert, as a unique human being, and bring your team along with you, because they're the ones that make you look like rock stars.
That sounds amazing.
I
That
hope.
sounds amazing. I can't wait to attend your session myself, even though like I know a lot about introversion because I'm an introvert, had to work with it a lot to get the best out of myself, the best output as a leader. But I'll still be very curious to see what you got to say with this. So yeah, very excited.
Thank you.
And finally, Janice, so where can people find you? How can people connect with you?
I am lucky enough to be the only Janice Chaka on the internet. So you can Google me and it's only me, but LinkedIn is the best place. And of course, my 2 websites. So I have the Introvert Success Guide or Introvert Success Guide. Either of those will lead you to one place. And the Career Introvert, which is the brand that's most well known right now.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for this. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and I look forward to your session.
Thank you so very much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.